Pregame.com.
Kicking off the college football season down under on Saturday night, ESPN. This is Brad Powers in the Pregame.com studios just off the Vegas Strip, and it's finally here, the 2017 college football season. We got a solid matchup for you in Sydney, Australia, between Rice and a top 15 power-rated Stanford team.
Saturday night in Vegas, we'll all be watching the big game. We'll all have bet the big game. This game will be on concurrently. We may as well have some action on this also. Who do you like?
I actually like the total in this one. We're going over the total. That's right. We're taking over 50.5 in this one. Here's where I think the market's misrepresenting this number. I expect both offenses from last year to be improved. And many times when lines makers are making totals lines for week one, what I've found out is a lot of times they base themselves off of last year's full season stats. Well, the full season stats would have said both Rice and Stanford were below average offenses last year. The reality was they were very poor offenses in the first half of last season and were above average, and in Stanford's case, a very good offense at the end of last season. You look at Rice's first 6 games, their offense only averaged 19 points per game. Last 6 games of the season, they averaged 31.5 points per game. Stanford's first 7 games of last year, a disaster on offense. They only averaged 17 points per game. They get the right quarterback in place. They go to a very good offense, averaging more than 37 points per game. Because both offenses will be improved and they're being a little misrepresented in the market, that's why I think there's value on the over.
Now, I do have a concern here, and my concern is that this is not unusual, that scoring increases throughout college football week to week. Actually, it drops down a little bit week 4 when conference play starts. But in general, if you told me the total, and the total in this game was 51 at the end of the year, and everything else was equal, I would make this total 48 because it's the first game of the year. Any concerns?
Yeah, you make a great point. But here's where I'm going to disagree. Last season, yes, these two did play at the end of the regular season, but I thought it was a relatively meaningless game. Stanford's coming off a lot of Pac-12 rivalry games, the big game against Cal, a game against Oregon, so they didn't have a lot of energy heading into that one. I expect them to have a lot more energy for this one in a new season. And plus, Fez, yeah, the total was 51, around where this total line is here. And the game went over the total by a touchdown. It's not like there was a totals line of 51 last year. The two teams combined for 40 points, and we're setting the totals line at the same number. So I'm not as concerned as you are.
That's a good point, that going back in our time machine, we probably would set this total at 55, not that 51. Talk to me about experience for both teams going into this year on offense.
Yeah, both offenses experience. Rice, 7 returning starters. I expect much better play at the running back position and the offensive line for this season. Stanford, much better at the quarterback spot. The wide receiver, they barely had a passing threat and a vertical threat down the field in last year's passing game, and I expect their offensive line to be at least more experienced and better than what they were last year.
Now, a little bit of a red flag. Much better at the quarterback spot. So their quarterback is Christ. He blows out his knee, ACL, in the bowl game. Are they going to be much better?
Yeah, no, you got to love the beauty of modern medicine. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I'd have a significant worry on Keller Christ blowing out his ACL in the last game. Reality is he opens up fall practice 100%. David Shaw announces him as a starter several weeks ago. No issues for me. And even if there is a little bit of an issue, I like their backup a lot. KJ Costello got a lot of snaps in the spring and looked good in the spring game.
Your second key handicap.
Second key handicap, let's talk about the key player for Stanford that's not there. And I think there's an overreaction to Christian McCaffrey, one of the best players in college football, not being there for the Cardinal this year. And so you're thinking their offense is going to take a step back. I'm saying I'm not as worried because their backup last year, Bryce Love, had nearly 800 yards rushing as a backup. And the 2 games McCaffrey missed because of injury, what does Love do? He goes in there and runs for over 100 yards both games. I'm not as concerned as the markets are. RJ
Bell would be proud of you because he often talks about how overrated running backs are. Now, I'm more middle of the road here. I agree with him, but I think that there are special backs that can make a difference. Let's face it, there are those in the NFL forecasting that McCaffrey is going to make a difference for the Carolina Panthers. Given that, and given he touched the ball almost half the plays the last 2 years at Stanford, might this not be a real concern?
Well, look, I go through each and every position on every college football team and put an up arrow or a down arrow and upgrade the position or downgrade the position. I downgraded the position, Fez, so I took it into consideration. I just don't think it's a disaster at the position. Look at the history of the Stanford running back position. The last 9 seasons, their leading rusher has averaged more than 1,400 yards. And listen to their head coach, David Shaw. He's not worried about losing McCaffrey. In fact, he said he expects Bryce Love to be one of the most dynamic players in all of college football this year.
Well, I'll be watching it with the volume off while we watch the fight on our second TV. Let's make it official.
Yeah, let's make this one official. We're taking the over in the Rice-Stanford game, and I expect both offenses to be much improved over last year. The totals market, though, is using full season stats from last year, not taking into consideration how much these offenses improved from the end of last season. Also, you look at the overreaction to Stanford losing Christian McCaffrey. It's not that big of a deal for me. I expect Bryce Love to be dynamic this season, and you look at the history of the running back position for Stanford, says expect a lot of production. Add it all up, I'm going over the total, down under for one of the first games of the college football season. We'll have more videos at pregame.com.